because we're only 19 people so far.
I just realized that the video the recording had started, and it's gonna be just on for the time of the presentations, if I got it correctly, right?
I think that's what we agreed, yes.
All right.
Here's Roland again and Leonie.
Finn, can we just open the access so people are not in the lobby anymore?
I can take a look, but I think...
Yeah, it's me. I'll do it.
All right, perfect. Just in the meeting settings.
Mm-hmm.
Did we get a reminder about this or a link sent out about this yesterday? I think enough. Okay, but not from Jana, from the SuSanA secretariat. Okay,
That's right.
Why didn't I get it then? I don't. It's totally hopeless.
I got 3.
It's possible.
I got.
But I managed to find my way in. But not seeing chats. Not what a horrible week. Yeah. Anyhow, I'm here.
I think it's an
Madeline.
Okay, with
Madeleine,
this words, maybe we can
the chat.
start. Huh?
You don't
Sorry?
have the chat button, Madeleine, at the top bar?
Nope, nothing.
Okay, we'll sort that out, but not now.
Yeah. Okay, Secretariat, CMTF, what do you think? Shall we start? Although it's only 22 people, but considering the time, maybe it's better to start. So
yes,
welcome to everybody.
I think we should start, yeah.
And maybe now you can unshare the welcome slide. And with that, I would hand over to Arne.
Maybe we can wait for 5 minutes.
No, I have a next meeting at 3.
Yeah, so let's get started. Some people might join. So is it my role to talk about the housekeeping? Because that slide is there. We agree that as we are not too many, and as it is good to see faces, that everybody's invited to keep the camera on if he likes or she likes, and that we'll put into the focus those who are presenting. Maybe during the presentation one can as well switch the camera off, but otherwise that we have a discussion. And I think the chat in any case still can and should be used, and there'll be no break. And I think that's it in the housekeeping, and it's sort of recorded, so people who don't want to be recorded would have to leave, but I hope you'll all stay. And with a few welcoming words, I can underline again that how thankful we are for the voluntary work of the Change Management Task Force, who have done a lot of work to bring SuSanA 2.0 or the next incarnation of SuSanA closer to us, and to our consultants from Como Consult, who have helped, to the support from ERWAC and others that this can happen, and to all those who have now joined and read the paper so that we can have a good discussion. It's important for us to, beyond the core group, beyond the CMTF, get some input and insights, how you think about it. And so this is an important hour, I think, for the whole of SuSanA. And with this, back to Jana, who is guiding us, I think, through the day, or the hour, the 90 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Arne. I hand swiftly over to Francis.
Good day, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for joining us. I am Francis de los Reyes from the Change Management Task Force, and welcome to this session, which is a feedback session. I think what we want to do is to get as much feedback from everybody who's here. Hopefully, you have gone through a little bit of the concept note, and we can have an open and fruitful discussion. I think before we start, I'd like to acknowledge and introduce the CMTF members who are here. and maybe you can just wave or say hi. Leonie is there. Madeline. Shobana. Depinder. Let's see, who else is in here? But we have a few more. Celia Bedoya, Maureen Makabane, and Lara Nasar. I think Lara should be here.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Lara. And so again, we'd like to make this session an open welcome session. We do have an agenda, and guiding us through this agenda would be our consultants from Como Consult, Yana Marie Mertens, and Richard Bennett. And so in the interest of time, I'll turn it over to Yana, who'll guide us through the agenda, and then we'll get to it. Yana?
Yeah, thank you. Welcome from myself as well. I'm just going to briefly run you through today's agenda. We'll start with a presentation by the CMTF that will be done by Francis and by Depinder Kapu. And then they'll talk about the background. Just a brief recap of the organizational development process up until today. Talk about vision and purpose of SuSanA and the main elements of the proposed structure and the concept paper. But we're all hoping, obviously, that you've at least skim-read the paper or the executive summary, so we can dive deeper into the elements. And then we'll have room for your questions. Well, we're currently not that many people. Maybe we can even go with the audio channel. Otherwise, we would recommend using the chat for questions, and you can even use the chat while Depinder and Francis are presenting, so we can see your questions. Then we'll have a few questions to you, because we're obviously hoping to engage with you. And then there will be the hard piece of today's meeting, a discussion of risks, threats, obstacles to change that you foresee, and also of opportunities and drivers that you envisage. And we would like to not only talk about the risks and the opportunities, but also go a step further and brainstorm on possible next steps and on ideas to leverage the opportunities, but also to overcome obstacles and address the challenges that you might foresee. And with that, we will wrap up and close at 3:30 Central European time. And with this, I would already hand back to Francis and to Depinder for the presentation. We will stop the recording, probably not after the presentation, but after the Q&A session. So we have a safe space for a discussion here, just so you know.
Thank you, Yana. We'll just go through a little bit of background and context that will hopefully prime us for the discussion. And again, I would like to recognize the members of the CMTF. They're here on the slide, as you can see. And in this group, the Change Management Task Force, see if I can, was convened in 2019, actually 2 SuSanAs ago. And the idea was to really answer this overall question of what is the best organizational structure for SuSanA, our next phase. And our mandate, as we understood it, is to propose a new organizational structure and ensure that this is an independent process. The CMTF has a lot of decisions to make, but it should be a participatory process. And we have already consulted a few stakeholder groups, and now we're trying to bring in also the SuSanA membership who are interested. So this is part of that process. And of course, we will try to also answer that question of transition, or how do we get there. So it's, in some ways, it's actually a very clear to do for the task force. the way that the a core group and what we call the group of 3 or 4 or 5 that put the CMTF together, the way that they have delineated the phases for the CMTF are these steps. So there's the initialization phase, concept phase, and then the decision-making phase, and then finally the implementation. So we are now, we have this concept. It is not set in stone. There are a lot of things that are more or less, the CMTF agrees on, but we'd like to get as much feedback as possible. So we really are in the stage here where we're trying to get feedback from the wider SuSanA community, and there's going to be maybe some back and forth there between important stakeholders. And then finally, we'll come back with a suggestion, or if you will, a structure that has to then be implemented. So I just wanted to give that brief overview. And again, it's taken a while. There were a lot of documents and things that the CMTF had to go through, and initial decisions. The most recent, I'll pick up the timeline in about fall 2020, when we finally got Como Consulting to be part of this through the sponsorship, the funding of GIZ and AVAL. So we'd like to acknowledge them. And basically from November 2020, they gathered the reports and interviewed the CMTF. There was a document on a status quo analysis that the CMTF gave feedback on, and then another report that was produced on options. And then again, the CMTF was involved with giving feedback, and then a concept note. Sorry, I don't know what's going on now. And okay. And then the secretariat was also looped into this process. A few focus group discussions were done, and then presentation of the core group in August. And so here we are now, where we basically have a draft report still. It says here final concept, but really there are some things there that we'd like to get feedback on. And here we are at the presentation at this meeting. And after that, looking ahead in the fall, we'll keep going with stakeholder consultations, and then come up with this final document, including a draft implementation framework. So that's looking ahead in terms of the process. So we have made some progress. I know it's been a long time, and everybody wants to get this finished. I'll turn it over now to Deepinder to talk a little bit about SuSanA, the purpose, and how the structure fits into it. Deepinder?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, welcome everyone. And this is one of the several kind of opportunities. Am I audible? Let me just check that, please.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
please go on.
Yeah. So this is one of the several interactions we've had with some of you already, and with a lot of other stakeholders, in trying to convey to you what we have discussed as the Change Management Task Force, as the future structure, as well as the purpose of SuSanA. And this has been a good process for the 7 of us who were representing different organizations and different profiles. Therefore, we tried to bring in our collective understanding of what SuSanA could do and should do. And we presented, we discussed it, and from the emerging discussions in 2019, when the SFERA report was presented, this group of Change Management Task Force met several times and identified the visions and purpose statements, which in a way reflect the core of SuSanA. So the core of SuSanA, of being an open network, which is there for sustainable sanitation, that remains. So for example, if you see the vision statement, it reads, it defines all people in all its manifestations, and the purpose statement describes SuSanA as a platform or a network which is dedicated to informing, educating, inspiring sector professionals, policymakers, researchers. So very much the same, but what is important, therefore, for CMTF and for all of you who are valued members of SuSanA, is to come to the structure which enables this vision and purpose to materialize. So I just repeat, the purpose and vision reflect very strongly the networking and an open forum agenda of SuSanA. And therefore, we quickly wanted to decide the options for the structure, which I will just present in brief and overview, and Francis will and Jana will share in detail. And we are very happy that we have this opportunity today to get this feedback. So the change objectives of SuSanA, we looked at the purpose and the structure fit. It was actually to see how SuSanA in its extended or expanded version becomes more effective, appropriate, and inclusive. So when we are saying effective, one of the weaknesses which we saw in the SuSanA structure was a lack of formal internal structures and systems, which sometimes hinder a judicious decision making or even enabling funders to contribute to a mechanism which is transparent, open, and formally established. So the first criteria was how to improve the internal systems functioning of SuSanA. Secondly, we tried to look at the agenda, and as Francis said, we are at before the decision-making stage, but we did want the agenda of SuSanA to represent all these four broad categories of knowledge networking, research, capacity development, and advocacy. Perhaps advocacy was added on with some deliberation on whether SuSanA should now get into advocacy beyond just networking. So the idea was that the structure of SuSanA should enable this agenda setting to take place. So again, the structure therefore is important. And as CMTF, we haven't got into the business plan or details of what SuSanA should be doing. We've restricted ourselves to the purpose and structure. And in order to make the structure reflective of the priorities and demands of southern-based organizations and agencies and countries, we felt that if there is a more representation of in the steering group or in the management or governance of SuSanA, more representation of southern-led organizations and agenda setting, that would really help. So all this is facilitated in terms of a structure which enables these three things is something which we will share with you in the following slides. And Francis, you will be taking on from here.
Yes, thank you, Dipinder. So with the help of the Como Consult, a document was prepared and broad decisions were outlined and made in terms for options for membership, governance and decision making, deciding whether SuSanA would be registered independently or have a host, and then options for the secretariat, and then also the resourcing framework. So there were some broad decisions, and again, a lot of the details are not finalized yet, and we'd like to get feedback on all of these. One of the main things that were decided very clearly was that SuSanA, in terms of the membership, would have these types of members, with the core being active individuals within SuSanA. So this will be the full members. So we're talking about the 10,000 plus or 13,800 members that are considered members of SuSanA. Now, how do we make them all full members that are active and form the core of the network? There was also space for associate members, active organizations, which we all, belong to one or a few organizations, and they should also have a role as associate members. But the idea is that the core are individual members. There is some discussion on having a third category, subscribers, and these are individuals and organizations who would like to avail of some of the knowledge management infrastructure, maybe get information, receive newsletters, and so on. But they're not considered active members and so don't have any rights and responsibilities. So in that document, in that concept note that you all got, there was some description of the rights and responsibilities of all of these types of members. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the framework, the structural framework, and then we can open it up to questions. I can't see the chat, so I don't know if people are already typing in questions. But I think we are a small enough group that we can actually just have a discussion if you don't want to type in. So let me start with the top structure here, which is the governance structure. So this is something that was largely informal right now in SuSanA, and this is a way of formalizing it. At the end of the day, the ultimate governance are actually with the full members as owners. And the way that this is exerted is through some assemblies throughout the year, for example, during the SuSanA general meeting. But the members, as we envision it, are actually part of regional chapters. And if you look at the concept note, you can see that the suggestion is for, I believe, 9 regions. And so everybody is actually organized into these regional chapters. And the regional chapters vote their representatives to the steering committee. The steering committee right here in the middle is the main body that is envisioned to be the governance of SuSanA. And so the steering committee has representation from all the different regions, and because their regional representatives were elected by the individual members, they represent pretty much the individual membership of SuSanA. Associate members organizations also have a seat in the steering committee. And so that's again detailed in the concept note in one of the chapters. So again, the steering committee now is the formal decision-making body of SuSanA. Obviously, they go through their consultation process, but decisions are enacted. Strategy, like Deepinder mentioned, will be something that will be set by this steering committee. So it's important that this has representation. Now, one question that we had was, will SuSanA be registered independently as an organization with financial, tax status and so on, and can enter into contracts? And we felt that it was too early for that in SuSanA's transition. And so that initially we would need a host organization. And this host organization here you see on the right is an organization that has the legal representation, if you will, the legal framework so that SuSanA can operate. So they can enter into contracts, they can hire employees, they can receive donations from donors in the name of SuSanA. And this is going to be governed by contracts. And again, ideally, the host organization is something in the sanitation sector. It's possible that it might not be. There are pros and cons, and where this is located and so on. These are the details that we would have to try to untangle as we move along. Now, the steering committee and the host organization, they operate through the global secretariat, which is very similar to the secretariat we have right now, except the idea is that this doesn't have to be, concentrated in one area. And then this expert advisory group is an external group that can advise the steering committee too. And then the way that operates is basically we still have the working groups, the forum, the regional chapters, and these are the different ways the members can actually contribute. And basically, this is something that is more dynamic and something that will change over time. But the important thing is having a governance structure and having the initial operational structure working here at the bottom. I don't want to take too much time. I think you want to have a discussion, and so I will stop my presentation, and then turn it over to Yana. And so maybe we can have maybe together, Yana, we can handle a Q&A. So let me stop my presentation.
Great, Francis. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we can do with actual hand raising and actual people talking. So do come in if you have a question. I would like to start with Dorothee's question that is quite specific, and Dorothy is asking whether one can be part of several regional chapters. For instance, if working somewhere else than actually or working in different regions. Or can somebody be active outside their own chapter, changed chapters? That is a very detailed, specific question. Can I hand that over to the CMTF and/or Richard? Whether there's already an idea on that.
I may just add on something. I mean, the reason is because I mean it depends really how these regions, what is their power. But you want, if you shape the organization through your region, you have an interest in shaping it there where you work.
Yeah, great, thank you.
So maybe I'll take a stab at it. This is a detail that we need to think through. And the first thing that I will tell you is that we will consider as many aspects of this as possible, when we're thinking through. Definitely you only vote through one region, right? But then we also want to preserve the open network. So I think the region is really organized for representation. But in terms of working, obviously, if you're working in, let's say, South Asia and Africa, that's okay. That you work through, it still is an open network. And we'd like to preserve the fact that people like to volunteer in different working groups or in different, committees that are formed all over the world. But in terms of representation, you only get one vote. I think that's the most important thing. We have, I think, actually 37 people with hands raised.
Lara, did you want to respond to the question? Or is that
yes, if I may, maybe it would be a good idea to just give Dorothy an example. So if you live in Africa, you may vote to be part of the voting process in Africa. But if your organization works in the Middle East, you can still be part of the regional chapter's work in the Middle East, for example, if that makes any sense. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Lara, for making it much more concrete. Dorothy, does that answer your question?
For now, yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Then I've got Christoph and Duro Nicodemus, and I think Duro was first.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Mine is an observation on the diagram. I think the arrow from the assembly down to the region before the steering committee. So I am thinking that since the assembly is the highest organ of the proposed, then the region should actually be converge in the steering committee, because the membership of the steering committee actually are representatives from the region. So the region between the steering committee and the assembly shouldn't actually be there, because the region, the chapters are actually captured on the lower diagram this thing. So that's just an observation I'm trying to make. Thank you.
Thank you. That's basically an observation, right? Well spotted there. I think we've discussed that, haven't we?
No, I think the arrows are governance arrows. So in terms of, I think that arrow was just to show that the steering committee was going to be composed of representatives from each region. And by that, it really means that the regions actually have a say also in the steering committee. I think it's more of a conceptual arrow, if you will, like a governance arrow rather than an operational arrow.
It's not a body as such.
Jana, there is a
yes?
question in the chat which falls under the same topic. Maybe Francis can more elaborate on that, since we're talking about the same issue of arrows and elections and members and steering committee.
If you allow, Christoph, then we're going to hold back for a minute. Francis, do you see the chat, or do you want me to?
I see the chat. Yeah, it is the steering committee is the most senior decision making, but I think the arrows mean that basically they're elected, right? But in terms of decision making, once you have the steering committee that serves for a certain amount of time, then they make the decisions. I guess those arrows are more of accountability and maybe elections, if you want to think about it that way. But in terms of governance, it's the steering committee. Once the steering committee is in place, they get to make the decisions.
Jana, there was a question before that, actually, also about the same issue, but it would be good if Francis maybe just responds to that. The question says, can you elaborate a bit more on the arrows from the members to the regions? Are we talking about elections, appointing and confirming? Have you gone through the practicalities of such a procedure?
So we have not really gone through the specifics of how this is going to happen, and that is part of basically a transition in an implementation phase, a planning phase. The goal of the CMTF, with the help of our consultants Anna and Richard from Como, is to prepare a transition document also. Like, how do we get there? I think the way that we have approached this is, what is the ideal final result, or the ideal structure for the SuSanA of tomorrow? And then how do we get there from where we are now to that is another discussion. But it's important to figure out where we want to go. But yeah, we will consider those practicalities. It's going to be a big lift. Organizational change is always hard, and in the first few years are always crucial. And so we understand that it's going to take a lot of buy-in, a lot of work from a lot of people to make this work. Yeah. So hopefully we've answered some of those. I think Christoph has been patiently waiting. So Christoph?
Maybe just one word, Christoph. The errors are actually, most of them, if I'm not mistaken, are explained in the concept paper. So just to make it easier to digest the model, we've not added elections and oversight and so forth, but most of it becomes clear once you go through the concept paper. Apologies, Christoph, over to you.
Okay. Yeah, my question was about the hosting institution. So I think we all agree that's going to be very crucial on who we select. And my question would be around, what are the steps that we're going to take to ensure that we make the right selection? What are the incentives that we're providing? And then lastly, I think we discussed it in an earlier chat with the task force, the importance also of the country, because depending on in which country this host institution is situated, it's either going to be more friendly, let's put it that way, in terms of taxation, in terms of allowing donations, grants, and so on, or more cumbersome. And I think those are key criteria that we'll have to be looking at. Over to you, Francis.
Yeah, so maybe I would see if Richard can I can try to respond, but I think Richard is probably the better person who can also give examples.
Okay, so there's a section of the concept paper on hosting, which lays out the beginnings of an answer to what you're talking about, Christoph. There are some criteria for the selection of host, which cover already some of the areas you're concerned about, and which are still in development with the CMTF. So the criteria are not yet finalized. What I think is agreed is that once the criteria are finalized, there will be an open call for organizations that might want to be host, and they will be then assessed against those criteria. The criteria, of course, include consideration of what charges they might make for the services they're providing and so on. So there's a cost effectiveness element that is in there as well. And there are elements in there which are about the jurisdiction under which the host operates and whether that is facilitative or less facilitative for free civil society operation. So those are in there as a means of consideration. The details of how the assessment would be done and who would conduct the assessment, those sorts of details are still to be worked out. One of the next steps in the work of the CMTF and SuSanA as a whole is to work through the details of a transition phase from where SuSanA is at the moment to getting to a new model. And that's some of the detail that would be looked at during that transition phase.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Maybe I don't have any hands, but maybe Antoinette, you would like to come in with your concern about observing the level of activity of members to ensure that they are eligible for full membership.
Yeah, it's not the same as the topic about the host organization, right? I'm just thinking about how it would work in practice, and maybe it does work very well in practice. It's just thinking about this list on the page 12, which has the rights and responsibilities in activities, and it expresses overall the idea that full members are full members because of their engagement and not so much of a payment, right? But then the question, of course, would be, why would somebody be a full member and another one not be a full member? And if that level of engagement lapses over time, are we then going to ask people to leave because they're no longer fully engaged? And yeah, sometimes they may be not so fully engaged for very good reasons. It could be very sensitive. How do we manage that? I'm in favor of it, yeah. I think it's very nice because it keeps it open, but how do we manage that? Or do we say we just take it based on everybody's personal responsibility, which would mean that everybody could be a full member anyway?
I think that it's, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know if it requires a response. I think that's true for any organization. You will always have, the Pareto principle somewhat operating, right? There's always a core that's doing a lot of the work, and then, but we want to preserve the fact that SuSanA is an open network, and we can think about some ways that we can make sure that there's maybe a minimum, I don't know, just a silly example. You can ask members to at least post once in the knowledge forum, right? In the forums, or yeah, and obviously if you have a membership fee, maybe however nominal that is or however small, you still get a little bit from the full members. I think that's true for any organization.
Yeah, thank you. I think that already leads a bit into the next session, which is the discussion of threats and opportunities. And I would like to make the suggestion that we pick that up and note it in the mural at a later stage as well. There's one more question here on the membership renewal from Sean. Would full and associate membership be renewable annually? That means, will the Secretariat need an administration to chase membership renewals and contributions?
I think the quick answer is we are also weighing the pros and cons. We are aware that sometimes, let's say if you're only charging a few dollars for membership, that the cost of actually doing that operation is much more than what you would get. So this is something that, yeah, the nuts and bolts are going to be important here. But, you know, in terms of membership fees, I'm assuming that we, you know, with software and those kinds of things, that this can be done more efficiently rather than having a lot of paperwork, if you will, a lot of admin time.
Great, thank you. The other inputs that have come into the chat, I think they all fit very well into the discussion, and looking at the time, I would suggest to move to the next item on the agenda. But before we do that, obviously I have a Richard hand here, so we would like to, yeah.
I'm sorry, Jana, I didn't want to hold you back from moving on. I think it's maybe just worth saying that one of the concerns that have been raised about the way forward on membership is about the potential for administration to become very costly. And I think it's worth focusing in on the difference between the administration making decisions about who is a full member and who isn't, and whether to withdraw full membership from people, or whether it's a self-assessment exercise and you rely largely on people's own honesty in deciding whether they're still effectively full members or not. At the moment, you've got more than 13,000 individuals and I think 350 organizations involved in SuSanA. You probably don't want somebody in administration working their way through 13,000 individuals and deciding whether they're full or associate. So I think you're more or less bound to run a system which is largely self-assessment by members themselves. You may want to, at the extremes, you may want to have some sort of sanction if people are getting it wildly wrong. But you probably want to be quite gentle about that, otherwise it becomes a very costly process.
Great, thank you, Richard. We still have room to continue the discussion later on today. With this, I would like to invite you to answer a couple of questions to us, the CMTF and the Secretariat. And for that, could you please maybe use your phone or any other device such as your computer and enter Slido, that is sli.do or slido.com, and then you will be asked to enter the event code, which is 786202, and there you will be seeing a number of questions that we are curious to hear from you about. Let us know if you have trouble entering the system. It goes very well with mobile phones connected to the internet or your laptop. I can't see any entrance yet, so do let me know if you've already started.
Started, but takes time.
Okay. Thank you, Arne. No, something's happening. We've got a researcher there. And as for the comments in the chat function, colleagues from the Secretariat, maybe we can start entering those in the mural on the threats and opportunities sides for discussion. All right.
Just a question, just a point here. Chaudhary, the link, the code that you are sharing, unfortunately, is not correct. So it's 786202, in case someone got lost like me, and apologies for that. And yes, some of the points have been taken in the mural, but in general, so they have not been clustered yet.
Okay. Great, at least they're captured, that's great. So we have a majority here using SuSanA for knowledge sharing, followed by networking and by content such as the libraries. Your role in sustainable sanitation, it's mainly other. It's not a good sign for the people designing the questions, which would have been me, followed by researcher, think tank, and so forth. And then we asked, what do you think should be SuSanA's priorities? And 93% opting for knowledge sharing, such as the forum. And again, the networking is a big aspect here, and content, and roughly 30% vote for advocacy and 20% for research, and then a smaller share for capacity development. And then we were curious to hear, because that's a big point of debate here among us and the CMTF, what would be a good membership fee for an annual membership for individuals. And 60% of you think that it should actually be 10 to 20 US dollars, and a few say 5 to 10, and 17% say we should not leverage a fee at all. And we asked, how would you like to contribute to SuSanA as a member? And most of you say you would like to organize events, webinars, knowledge exchange meetings, and create SuSanA publications with partners. And the third highest ranked is upload and disseminate content. Okay, that was it from the question round. And with that, I would like to continue the discussion that we've already started. And basically, you can continue using the chat, or you can raise your hand. And what we would like to encourage is that you look at, stop the presentation. Look at obstacles, threats, and risks. Some of them have already come up, but also start thinking about ideas how to address those, because we're all in this boat together, and it's good to start thinking of ideas how to address challenges. And you can use the mural to enter ideas, or you can just raise your hand, and we'll enter them here for documentation. I think the Secretariat colleagues are entering the link to the mural. You can simply use these post-its to enter your thoughts there, or even erase the post-its. The left side is the one on risks and obstacles, and the right side is the one on opportunities and drivers for change. And we encourage to look both at the concept, so the structure, but also at the transition phase, at the change process, if you will, towards a new shape in SuSanA. So, Francis, I haven't looked at the chat yet, and I see that there's a lot of activity. Do try if you want, and you're affine to online collaboration tools. Do try and find the it doesn't work. And let me share the screen again, but you can raise your hand and just start discussing while I share the link again.
So I think we're asking people to join on the mural and type in if they wanted to, or if you type it in the chat, you know, one of us, this CMTF or the secretariat, will try to put them in the post-it notes here also.
So we have lots of links now. I hope you'll find your way. But do not refrain from just talking, you know. We shouldn't get lost with tools and formats here.
So there's a couple of comments here on the membership fee. You know, is it possible? Arnie is saying, could we have a voluntary fee? People pay as they can, and Antoinette said, I think the membership fee should vary depending on the region where you live. And these are all on the table. I think the question was more to kind of see what the appetite was for a level of membership fee. Another point was maybe there should be ways to offset membership fees from folks who can pay for folks who can't, like students and so on. Yeah, I think that's a good idea too.
Francis, if you want, I am taking note of all of these suggestions. Jana, is there space we can put them on the mural, or should I just keep them as notes here?
There is a space for notes on the mural on the right-hand side, and Cecilia has already typed in lots of post-its I can see on the far right on the mural, Lara. If they don't fit into the plus or minus categories that I've prepared.
Yeah, I see people navigating there, and I would encourage them to go back to the opportunities and drivers.
They are on the left-hand side. So for entering, and the next steps are the little yellow post-its.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is concern about dominance of people, of groups of people in the network. I couldn't see who typed that. Do you want to say something on that? Matthias, I think, maybe? Matthias? Was that your post-it? Or did you just hover above it with your cursor?
I made a comment, this is Antoinette again. I made a comment about dominance or hijacking. I mean, if a certain organization has a lot of members in a regional network, then one member, one vote system, it could mean it's hijacked the process, right? Now, normally we expect everybody, to be of good intent and this doesn't happen, but I do think maybe we need to have some system to guard against that in case it does happen.
Richard, that's probably an expert question for you there. Do you have experience with that, preventing networks to be hijacked by particular groups?
I see that Duro is not having problems with the link. So Duro, you can put your contributions in the chat, or you can talk directly into the forum. We really would appreciate to have your contributions. So don't feel limited by not entering into the Mural.
Jana, can I answer that?
Yes, of course. Yeah, great.
Yeah, this is Dipinder. So my experience on this question, which Com had raised, Antoniette, sorry, has raised, is that this is important, certainly, of organizations or groups trying to hijack. And my experience has been with the WSSCC. We had a very similar kind of a system there of members electing. And there, the hijacking used to happen that suddenly before the elections, a lot of members would be enrolled. And we in CMTF, therefore, our proposal was that we have regional representation so that the hijacking at the international level doesn't take place. Now, if you want to break the system and hijack it at regional level, of course it is possible. But you can only work as much through the systems. Then you have to rely on people's goodwill and ethics. So at the international level, at least in this system, this is not possible because you come through regions. So you can't just, for example, in India being a big country, you can't just overnight enroll thousands of members and then, get yourself elected. So that won't happen in this kind of a system. I hope that answers.
You're muted, Jana.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything to that, Richard? Sorry, I just noticed.
No, I think myself that's a very good answer. I think when you have at the moment 13,500 members, it would take an awful lot of organizing to dominate a group of that size. Dipinder's right, it is always possible to recruit a lot of members in the short term in order to get some voting through, but it would be a lot of hard work to be honest. This is not being elected to the steering committee of SuSanA is not like being elected as an MP in a country. It's not going to carry that much political weight in somebody's life, I suspect, for it to be worth them putting in the effort to try and recruit a couple of thousand members in order to win the vote. So my guess, you know your members much better than I do, but my guess would be that the chances of anybody being able to dominate in that way, or even trying to dominate in that way, would be quite slim. But I may be wrong. You know your members, and you may know that your members are more manipulative than I think they are.
Thank you. And there is a continued discussion in the chat about membership fees, some suggesting that there should be a voluntary fee. And with that system, some have made good experience. That's very interesting. We'll take that on board as well. And some saying that it should be a fixed rate on the regional level, such as $10 US. So thank you for the input here. And no, the subscriber level would not, they would not have to pay any fees for that. What else has come up in the chat? But you can also raise your hands, and also if you've entered something on the mural and you'd like to stress it, use the microphone. We are a small group. By the way, it's an interesting observation. I'm not so familiar with SuSanA members, but what did we say, Cecilia? We had 290 registrations for this session, and how many people are we now? I don't know what that says. 39. So much about the concern about activity, right?
I think it might indicate proportionally how many active members we would have instead of subscribers. I think that gives us an indication, but that's my personal opinion. Maybe, hopefully I'm wrong. Yeah.
Well, if you have an active core, Richard, that's our experience, then that is sufficient. I mean, you need a critical mass, obviously, of engaged, smart, well-networked, knowledgeable people. But if you have that, it doesn't matter if the share of active members is smaller than the share of subscribers, obviously.
It is. I think in general, you usually say that 10% of the network's members are very active. But I mean, looking at when we are organizing this event, it's a Friday afternoon after a week of full of activities also, so it could have been something related to the time. But it's interesting though to see this kind of level. I think this is not only our session. I've also been in session where we counted on 1/4 of what has been signed up. So I think this is general for online meetings that we really have a lot of people signing up, and then they, for many reasons, cannot come join in the sessions.
Okay, I'm looking at the mural here. It says unclarity on how the secretariat is going to be recruited. Selection of team and head of secretariat as important as selection of hosting organization. And one way forward for that, that's how I read it, is to secure funding for the first 3 years, for example, starting in 2022, so that the recruitment and advertisement can start already, so that you can pick up in the process. You come in if you have any thoughts on that, CMTF and Secretariat and Richard, right? Elections are cumbersome. Will enough people participate to give elected people the needed legitimacy? Are elections that cumbersome?
I think that it can be, because it's not the only thing that people are doing, right? So I do think we need to. Yeah, I think the system of regional elections is good, but we should not do that every year. And I wanted to ask a question about subscribers are not contributing, right? Content. But some subscribers you would want to graduate over time to become full members. How do they make that transition? How do we encourage people to become active?
I think that's a good point. I think it really is seeing the value in being part of SuSanA, right? I mean, if a subscriber in some ways is just getting the benefits, but really not the rights and responsibilities. So there's got to be an inherent value in being active in SuSanA. And that's something that people would have to decide for themselves also.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something we need to think about, how exactly the transition from subscriber to member. I think that's just a logistics question. That's easy. It's more of what value do people get? And I think it's the same value that, why do we have 10,000 members? Although maybe you can argue only 10% of that is active.
Yeah, can I also?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this subscriber is an option for people who don't want to be active members. So if you want to be active members, you enroll yourself as a member. Nobody stops enrollment of members, but there could be some who don't want to be part of the voting process, be part of regional system. They can just be subscribers. So it's for those who don't want to. So it's not a question of motivating them to be active members. Whoever wants to be active member can enroll themselves on that active member button or paid subscription or whatever we decide finally.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. This is just to distinguish between people who like to be active and people who just want to read stuff. So we do have these 13,500 members now, but it's often there's this difficulty in distinguishing, okay, who is really active and who is just reading the newsletter and consuming knowledge. So there would be, I wouldn't call it restrictions, but I think active members would probably be have the ability to do more in SuSanA. For example, not only read and download material from the SuSanA library, but also actively contribute to it. If you publish something, you would obviously want to be active and engage yourself in SuSanA and distribute these materials, which would be done then as an active member and not as a subscriber. So they probably would have also different levels of rights within SuSanA.
May I also add something to the discussion that is ongoing on the chat, rather to motivate people becoming active members instead of subscribers? And I think that at least from my perspective, what I see, it's rather offering the opportunity to people who are already engaged with the network to share their or defend their interests as well, and post their own agendas and post other topics. So just to make it a bit more democratic. So it's a bit like a political process in the cities where we live in. As long as things are not fine, then you get engaged. So it's matter about enabling people to have a voice. I would say that the subscribers are mainly the biggest base of our network at the moment. But on the other hand is that we have not been enabling or welcoming enough to people who would like to contribute in different ways. So I think that what we are doing, what the suggestion is here is like, well, people will have more opportunities to interfere and also decide on the directions and thematic scopes and activities for the network than it is at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Cecilia. Any more thoughts on that?
No, anyone don't need to pay to post on the forum, neither to read. I think that our biggest value and it's to be an open source network, and we know that we catch the interest of many people who are not even from the sector, who just find us through search engines in the internet. I think that the point here is adding a bit of more sense of responsibility, even if the fee might be not it's not like when you pay for the gym and never goes just to exercise, it just gives you another push to do it. And if you don't want to do it, you don't do it anyways, you just spend money. So think about.
I've got one hand here, Dorothee.
Yeah, sorry, that's me. I asked the question for the forum. I think that's very important, and I'm very happy with your answer, because when we launched this forum, it was very difficult to convince people. Some members of SuSanA, they were really afraid of making these discussions open, but we gained so much from it, and the members, they jumped from in a few weeks from a few hundred to more than 1,000. So yeah, I'm happy to read that this will still be open and for free. It's the window to anyone who doesn't know SuSanA, I think.
Yeah, it shows all the energy, right? There is a concern about centralization of power and function in one place. the intention is to have a representative structure to ensure that that is not happening. But there is a suggestion to distribute various functions from the secretariat or aspects to different hosts, such as the forum, the library, SFD, and so forth. And so make sure that this also leads to solidarity between the different hosts, and then somebody posted that they like that comment. Are there any thoughts on that, on centralization versus and representation, and ensuring that there's not too much power focused in one place?
Maybe is anybody from the CMTF would like to try to answer that?
That was posting in the chat with that we don't have that luxury.
Well, I can try and answer bits of it. So the idea was to keep it as decentralized and global as possible. So that was actually one of the reasons why this whole CMTF process started. So this could be done, one, by ensuring that we have all regions represented in the steering group. So we ensure that there are in regions where we don't have a chapter yet, we establish chapters, and so they're equally represented within the steering group. And also the idea is to have a much more global secretariat, so the functions are not taking place just from one region, but rather we have secretariat representatives all around the world. This wouldn't mean that you have a secretariat representative in every region. That also would pretty much depend on funds that SuSanA receives, but the idea is to just also decentralize the secretariat so that they can be spread across different regions.
I think maybe the other part of the answer there is that even if you're right, Shobana, that the concept paper suggests that you could have the secretariat spread across different regions. They need to be managed by one person. You need a head of secretariat to manage the whole secretariat. However, that person is overseen by the steering committee, which is elected from across the regions. So there may be a certain amount of power held by the head of secretariat, but the steering committee has the hiring firing power, and if they get too worried about centralization of power, there are things they can do about it. So the members spread across the world are ultimately the ones with the power. And I think it's that protects you against a worry about centralization of power in only one place. Just the way that the governance is designed is specifically designed to do that.
Thank you, Richard. Lara.
I just want to say that Richard, you said that perfectly. I think coming from a person that used to work in the regional chapter and or in the region, it's the nice thing about this is that people in the region will now feel empowered in a way to make decisions on how the secretariat will work and or manage different initiatives in the region. And this is why members will feel pushed to want to become active members and want to become part of the voting process, because it's a loop at the end. You vote for people to be on the steering committee, and then the steering committee will shape the vision and mission of the secretariat, which then dwells down to the regions as well. And I think this is why it's so nice that people in the region will have ownership to how things will run in the future.
that links very well to one question on the mural, Lara, about the regions. Who defines the regions, and will they weigh the same? And I think we've made suggestions on regions, but not on the countries that should belong to them. And probably that's just an impulse. There should be a task force, or a group of people that really research and come up with or propose a good solution for that. And in terms of weighing, so far we've said that every region has 2 representatives in the steering committee, right? There was some discussion about that.
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, correct, Francis? That was the last idea we talked about.
Right. How are we on time, Jana, in terms of?
We're doing fine. We can have 5 more minutes to take ideas and suggestions, and then start to wrap up.
And also just to remind everybody, there is another page in the mural. If you move to the right, the opportunities and next steps. I think maybe most people are looking at the obstacles page.
And you think that's just a logistical thing? No, there is activity on the right as well, but good point there. Beyond this session, obviously, we will keep the mural open, so we encourage you to continue commenting if you want, and also contact the secretariat if you have ideas in the follow-up of this meeting, or if you want to engage in the process, so we can be in touch. Obviously, this is not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here. We can continue to be in touch, and we will. So what else is there? Thematic groups do not have a way to say something about strategic steering of the network might cause problems in the long term. Any thoughts on that? The role of thematic groups in the governance.
Yeah. We discussed a little bit about the thematic and knowledge, and a possible advisory group, and maybe some concerns of this could be channelized, but you have also to observe what kind of mandate this group has. But it is also important that SuSanA keeps on pushing the agenda and being on the edge. So we shouldn't lose that somehow, but we are working on this part to see. It could also be very specific knowledge that is not represented in the steering committee, where the steering committee would need some advice. It could be on legal issues or something like that. It could be also be temporary, but the role of an advisory committee is being studied, and we haven't really came on rather late in this process, but this is part of how the thematics and knowledge could somehow be in close connection with the steering committee, something like that. Am I correct about that, Richard?
Yeah, we also have the option, or we have the inbuilt idea that the steering committee can appoint temporary members, right, Richard, if particular competence is needed.
Yes, that's right. The way the concept note covers that at the moment is the majority of people in the steering committee would be elected. There'd be a small representation of organizational members as well, associate members, and then there's some room for the steering committee to consider whether it has the full range of skills or the full range of representativeness that it would like, and to be able to co-opt or invite in a small number of additional people to ensure that it covers both the skills and the representativeness that it feels it needs to be fully effective and legitimate.
Thank you. I would like to take one question and then maybe even have a look at Stefan's input before we actually wrap up for today. But I think all of the threads that we're picking up with you today we'll obviously continue to work on. Somebody posted transition would need committed voluntary representative transition task force, ? Yeah, obviously, I mean, the idea is that the mandate of the CMTF is clear, but the CMTF has been at the task for a relatively long period of time now, and there will have to be some sort of a wording is difficult here because we already have a core group, and if we establish a core group, a steering committee as part of the structure. For lack of words, we would also need some sort of a steering group for the change process, and that should be voluntary, committed, and of course representative. So maybe a bit similar to the CMTF, there should be criteria and a process for establishing that steering group for the change period. And then also we're thinking of smaller task forces on particular topics, such as the topic of host organizations. What should be the criteria? What could be a good process of already liaising with potential host organizations? And another area that could be well used to establish a task force was the one on donor consultation, because obviously this whole thing needs money, and we all know that that's a very critical point. So it's good to start rather today than later to maybe start liaising with possible donor organizations and come up with ideas how to incorporate those in the process. Francis, shall we take our Cecilia? You've got your hand up.
Cecilia, you're on mute.
Thank you. I just realized that we haven't stopped recording the session as we said we were going to do. So what we can do is make sure that in case you have issues in sharing the video, you can let us know. Otherwise, we just cut after the question and answer sessions before uploading it to the YouTube channel of the SuSanA Secretariat. I think that would be the most appropriate alternative to that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I suggest to cut it short as announced.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I said that I would like to pick up Stefan's comment, but looking at the time and knowing that some of you have scheduled follow-up calls, I think it's better, Francis, what do you think, to pick that up probably bilaterally, as we will some of the other comments as well. So we continue working on that. We would like to ask one more question on the Slido. So if you could, if you still have it open, if you could revisit the page slide.do and enter 786202. We've got a question there for you. That is, what comes to your mind when you think of SuSanA's future? And we would like you to answer in just one word. So if, for instance, you think of relevant network, that will be split into 2 words, and it's better to use the word relevance because it becomes visible in a word cloud. So only 1 word. And I see some of you have entered the code into the word cloud. That's fine.
Sorry, what was the code again?
786202. And you can enter multiple.
A word on what? Can you repeat it?
Sorry?
786202.
1 word on what?
On what do you think, what comes to your mind when you think of SuSanA's future? So that could be the future SuSanA, or the future of SuSanA, or the change process. We left it deliberately open. So what comes to your mind? What's, you know, the first association that you have when you think of SuSanA? Unfortunately, we have a few of these numbers now appearing, but that's not a problem. Let's have a look at the results. So the more often people enter something, it becomes bigger, obviously, in a word cloud. So collaboration, knowledge, and bright. So that's nice, bright future. Next meeting will not be an afternoon meeting, note to self. But it's good to start the process of feedbacking and picking up all the little details in the concept as well, because obviously it's so multifaceted. There are so many aspects to it. We're really, really grateful for all the energy that CMTF members have put into this. Yeah. So with that, I would like to say thank you. I really feel privileged to be part of this process together with my colleague Richard. And I would hand over to Francis.
Thanks, Jana. So first, thank you to everybody who joined in today. And, you know, we hope to engage you and you know, the rest of SuSanA in other ways as we work through this process. I think this is a process where, you know, I speak for the CMTF, you know, when I say that, you know, we were excited to be part of this, you know, we see a lot of potential, a lot of work that has been done already by SuSanA, and we're all in this because we all agree that sanitation for all is the goal and the mission. There's a lot of uncertainty. We understand that. It's always difficult. It's always, you know, uncertain, you know, anxiety-inducing when you're going through change. At the same time, you know, as reflected in some of the comments, there is a possibility for new ways of doing things and a chance to be better. And our goal is to balance also all the different aspects. You know, we want to be inclusive, we want to be representative, but we also want to make sure it's effective and it's doing the work that SuSanA says it wants to do. And there are trade-offs. It's never going to be perfect. There are some people who will say, okay, this is not going to be working, or there's always going to be, you know, something that may be a little bit wrong with whatever we come up with. You know, there's a saying, you don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. We also don't want to settle for good. We want to settle for something really better than what we have right now. We anticipate that maybe we're going to be down from the 14,000. We're going to be down to, I don't know, you know, maybe half of that, maybe even less. And maybe that's okay. These are just the trade-offs that we just have to be aware. The way we're thinking about this is we're trying to think about scenarios almost, right? There are concerns about, you know, what would happen if, you know, a group of people does this or does that. So we try to factor in those scenarios in whatever structure we might have. And then we also try to do the personas approach. I think this is something from SuSanA, right? If you are a worker on the ground, if you're a researcher, if you're a think tank person or from local government, how would you approach SuSanA? How would SuSanA make things easier for you? Why do you want to be part of SuSanA? So these are some of the things that we're aware of, we're conscious of, and at the same time, it's complicated. We need to make decisions, and we need to move forward, right? It's already taken a lot of time. So I think the bottom line is, please be assured that we will try to think about this as comprehensively as possible. We will try to involve everybody as much as possible. But in the end, just like any product of any human organization, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be hopefully better. It's going to be exciting. It's going to make us move forward and help SuSanA achieve the vision that we want, which is just sanitation for all, and working towards that. So with that, thank you again for your participation. Again, the mural will be open, right, Yana? And you have the link. You know, if you think of other things, please put it there. If you want to forward this to other folks in SuSanA who were not able to attend today, please forward to them the mural. And we are going to look at that, and there's still a lot of work for us in the next, few weeks. So thank you again for your participation. So with that, I think we are good, right?
In the physical world, we would now
something?
all get up and talk and have a drink and yeah. Thank you
Not
so
yet.
much, Francis.
I say the island, we miss it all.
Yes, we do.
We still have actually the closing plenary taking place in about half an hour, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
And then after that, we go to the island.
Exactly.
Yes.
Then then it's gonna be ready time for a beer for some of us, so we can.
Lovely
just-
sunshine here in Stockholm, I can tell you. It's
Oh.
very
I can see.
One reason more.
All right.
Lots of
So-
appreciation for the CMTF there in the chat and for the secretariat to keep it all together. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to the
hopefully
secretariat.
see
Yeah,
you all
thank you.
again soon.
And see you a bit in the
So,
closing
thanks,
plenary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Can
you.
someone send the link to the closing? Bye-bye.
I will.
If you registered, yeah.
Finn will.
I did. I have been registered from the start. Yeah. Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you very much, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Nice
Bye-bye.
seeing you there.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Shobana. Bye, Madeleine. Enjoy the sun. Bye, Aisha.
Hi. Hello. How are you? Bye-bye.